When it comes to old cars and bikes, there's nothing better than firing them up for the first time. Sometimes things go as planned. You celebrate. Yeah! And you get to move on to the next step. Sometimes things don't really go as planned, and that was certainly the case with version 2 of my Model A Roadster. For a little bit of backstory, I've been working on this version of the car for the last year and a half, almost 2 years, starting with 32 Ford frame and just a bunch of parts from all across the U.S. from some great friends. I've been managing to put it together, and when it came to the motor, it had to be a flathead, and as you may know, flatheads are getting harder and harder to find these days, especially in good condition. We've actually been through 2 motors on this car, even though we have 0 miles on any of it so far. But we have switched between the multiple motors, and eventually when I got one that looks like it's going to be good, it was time to fire it up. I had done all the preparation. I had pulled the heads, checked for cracks, regassed it, pulled the pan. I went through everything, cleaned out the oil pump, made sure everything was all set up as it should. We bolted on with 2 Strombergs and a Wyand manifold and got it all in there, and I dropped it in the frame, and I said, all right, it's time to fire this thing up. And this is a moment that we attempted to fire up back in November of last year, and it didn't go as planned. The engine was seized, and we then had to proceed to unseize it. There's a whole bunch of steps in that, not important right now. What's important is that finally, a few weeks ago, it was time to, let it happen, make it, see what this thing's got. I had put everything I had into it, and I said, all right, let's roll it out into the driveway, see if we can fire it. So we got the gravity feed fuel system going. We got the freshly charged battery, and I rigged up some wiring and hit the button, and it stumbled a little bit. Yes! And that thing fired right up. Yeah! We couldn't believe it. It was me and my roommates, and we were celebrating. We said, yes, this is finally happening. We can move forward with this car. And unfortunately, the more it ran, I could tell something was wrong. Having heard flatheads run before, there was definitely some sort of it was a very harmonic sound that was coming from the front pulley of the motor. And so I had a similar issue on my banger, and I just had the belt too tight. So what did I do? I tried adjusting the belt, didn't work. Tried removing the fan, didn't work. Tried removing the generator, nothing happened. It continued to create this almost like whirring noise. And the more I looked at it, I said, okay, this is for sure an issue. What's it going to take to fix this? And my heart immediately sank. So you have that peak of joy saying, yes, this thing's finally back to life. And then next thing you know, you could be tearing the whole thing down. You could be back on Instagram looking for yet another engine. And that is something that would I have to do it? If that's what it took, I would. But I really, really, especially having it back in the frame and ready to move forward. Anyway, so we drain the oil. There's no sign of water in the oil. It doesn't smell like gas. But there are some metal shavings. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do with this thing? So I waited a little bit, and I texted all my friends. I said, what is going on with this thing? Some said it had something to do with the header reverberation. Others were saying that it had something to do with the pulleys, or the fan, or so many moving pieces, or even the carb, or the timing. And there's, everything under the sun. I got so much help from folks. And I was just looking, I think I was looking on the ham, and I was thinking, what could this possibly be? I bet you there's a dent in the oil pan and the crank is hitting it. So what I do, I rush down to the basement, I look underneath, and there is a big dent in the front of the pan, probably from when we loaded it in the truck or whatever it may have been. So what I do, drop the pan, and lo and behold, there's the witness bar. There's the mark on there that the crank was indeed interfering. It had scraped just ever so slightly on that oil pan, but every time the engine would rotate, you hear that brrr noise. And so that was it. That was what the problem was. So what did I do? I took out the Harbor Freight dead blow, and I got a piece of lumber, and I did a little body work on that pan, and I regasketed everything, and I added some oil and put it all back together. And also I rigged up an exhaust system so the neighbors wouldn't be hearing the straight legs headers reverberating off the edges of the cul-de-sac. And you know what? It fired right up, and it sounded great. It ran smoothly. It idled wonderfully. It was alive, and there was no noise, and we had successfully found what the problem was, so it lives. For me, it took a little while because I had gone out of town and all these things, but to finally have this thing running, have it running smoothly, having it go through my vintage Fenton glass pack mufflers. I mean, it has a great sound to it, and it honestly feels like it's a huge weight off my shoulders. And I know that's given me the ability then to really continue on this car. So now we're focusing on things like the brakes, the brake system, as well as the brake drums. Starting to think more about steering, about I'm rebuilding the transmission right now. There's just so many components that I'm now able to take on, rather than saying, well, if the engine runs, then I'll be able to do this or I'll be able to do that. But now it's we're off to the races. So it's all hands on deck. I'm doing everything I can to get this thing running, or get this thing drivable in a pretty reasonable time frame. I'm gunning for the end of 2023, but got a lot of moving pieces before then. But I will say that just getting this engine running has been one of the greatest parts of this whole project. And I've heard it run, I've heard it idle, blip the throttle sometimes, and it's fun to listen to it, but I can't wait to get behind the wheel and actually get out on the road. So thanks everybody who's been following along and giving me advice, and for all the help. And we're gearing up for some really good days here. So just wanted to say thank you, everybody. And we're going to make this thing happen. So thanks, everybody. Talk to you later.